Alright, so with Season of Dawn, Bungie introduced a bunch of changes to the Dawnblade subclasses. With Top Tree, the changes are particularly extreme. It's basically a full rework of that subclass. And for Bottom Tree, less changes, but still a few tweaks here and there. There's a lot of new stuff to go over, like the new movement tech that was introduced with Top Tree. And there were also some negative effects with Burst Glide, with the way it interacts with the subclasses and the super specifically. Now, I'm not sure if the changes to Burst Glide are intentional. They did intend to make changes to it, but I'm not sure if they meant to make them to this extreme degree, because when you compare it to the other jumps, it's kind of ridiculous how much worse Burst Glide is. But luckily, there's a lot of new movement tech as well that we can use to get around the really bad changes, especially with Top Tree. Bottom Tree, honestly, is kind of screwed. If you're still playing Bottom Tree, it's kind of sad boy hours for you. So we're just going to go over the changes to Top Tree Dawnblade first. The melee has been completely reworked. It's now a ranged melee, which is very cool, but we're not really going to talk about that today because we're mostly concerned with the movement tech. You can now consume your grenade to get the heat rises buff, and this basically lets you float around in the air a lot longer than you normally would. I feel like it's very similar to just holding your charged grenade on Middle Tree Dawnblade with a well, except it doesn't last quite as long, but you don't need to hold your grenades. You can still, shoot your weapons from up here. So it's okay, but there's some problems with that we're going to touch on in a minute. They buffed the Icarus Dash, so you now actually have 2 charges of Icarus Dash. And they're both still on a 5-second cooldown. If you use 2 and the cooldown pops up, that means you just have to wait till the cooldown is there, and then you get both of them back. So if you see the cooldown on the side of your screen, you know that you have used both of them. The first one doesn't show the cooldown, but the cooldown is still there. Listen. And that's how you know you got your Icarus Dash back, even though the counter didn't show up on the side of the screen. There's also some minor changes to Icarus Dash and Super. You can't really spam it anymore, and I do not recommend spamming it because the double dash functionality will break the dash, and you won't be able to dash for like 5 seconds in Super, but you can still get the basic 1 dash off. And if this feels like a big nerf, don't worry, because there's some very interesting stuff you can do with Icarus Dash in Super now that you couldn't do before. Okay, so with all those changes out of the way, let's talk about what happened to Burst Glide. So with Burst Glide, they reduced the speed at which you activate your burst in the Super. So just to remind you, this is what a normal Burst Glide on the ground looks like. It's decent. Perfectly normal. Nothing is different here. Now when we pop our Super, you can see how slow that is. It feels like It legitimately feels like I'm running into a wall in midair, like an invisible wall. It just completely full stopped your momentum. I'm honestly not sure, but it feels even slower than just normal burst, because I don't feel like I'm running into a wall when I use it normally. And I'm looking at it in third person, so it's not like there's a difference in perspective here with the sword. I do not get the sense that I'm like getting slammed into a wall when I'm just running around normally with Burst Glide and a sword. So that is pretty huge. Another problem I noticed with Burst Glide that's maybe a little bit less of a problem is it feels to me like when you activate the Heat Rises buff that you go a little bit slower with Burst Glide. So I'm going to activate Heat Rises here. And yes, I think that's noticeably slower. I don't know about you guys, but this feels very slow to me. And then it goes away, and now I feel like I'm building up speed again. So with Burst Glide, the Super is bad, and there's no reason to use your grenade for the Heat Rises. Now, honestly, the Heat Rises isn't a huge deal to me because I don't think it's a very good ability to begin with. Your grenade is really, really valuable as a damage tool, as a spacing tool to punish people behind cover. I don't think it's worth consuming your entire grenade just to be able to stay in the air a little bit longer for 8 seconds. So the fact that Burst Glide does not work with that very well is not a huge issue to me, because it's not the kind of thing I would plan on using anyway. Now, just for comparison's sake, I want to show you guys the difference between, like Balanced or Strafe Glide in the Super, because these glides feel untouched. As you can see, I'm going really fast like Dawnblade normally is. I'm not hitting that weird wall, I'm not going super slowly. I'm doing pretty well for myself. And this is the same with Strafe Glide. It also behaves pretty much the same, slightly slower than the Balanced Glide. But it's still fast, which is part of the reason why I think that these changes to Burst Glide are not intentional, or at least they weren't meant to be that severe, because Burst Glide is by definition supposed to be the fastest jump in the Warlock jumps. It says so in the description. And so the idea that consuming the grenade would make your fastest jump go slower is really, that doesn't make sense, and that's really counterintuitive. And the same thing with the super. Popping your super and the fastest jump is now the slowest, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any design sense whatsoever. So I feel like this has to be some kind of a bug. But unfortunately, we have not gotten any confirmation from Bungie yet on whether or not it is a bug. So, you might be thinking, wow, this really sucks for Burst Glide. I guess I'm going to have to get used to Strafe Glide or Balanced Glide. And no, you don't, because there's some things you can do to change that. First of all, like I said, consuming the grenade, I don't think that's a big deal, honestly. I really don't think that's a big deal. I'm still going to use Burst Glide and just ignore the grenade ability. Second thing, however, is there's a new skating tech with Burst Glide and Icarus Dodge. Now, you can do this with the other glides, but because they're not as fast as Burst Glide in neutral, Burst Glide is the best. So the way you perform this tech is you're going to jump into a glide, and right after you hit your glide, you are going to hit your Icarus Dodge. So the full combination is jump, glide, and then Icarus Dodge. So to show it to you in action, jump, glide, dodge. And you can see we got a nice little burst of speed out of the dodge, which you normally don't get, because the normal dodge just boom, goes forward and it kind of stops your momentum. But with the glide, they sort of combo together to throw you forward like that. One really fun thing you can do is then combo this even further with a sword glide. So the normal sword glide is jump, swing, glide, and then we'll just tack an Icarus Dodge onto the end of that to extend our momentum even further. So jump, swing, glide, dodge. And you can see we get some good momentum going. We get going so fast there that we actually are able to damage ourselves on the structure. So that's some very good speed for just using a basic sword swipe. And remember, sword swipes can be done with anything in the game that uses third-person melee attack, including objective orbs in PvE. This is really, really good and very, very fast. Now, luckily, it doesn't stop there. Even though Burst Glide is really crap in the super, we can use the skating tech in the super to make ourselves go fast. So just a reminder, just to prove, we are on Burst Glide, and you remember how slow that was in super. So if I do the tech in super, jump, glide, dodge, you can see I get back the speed that we didn't have before. I messed up there. And this really gets us going in the way that you wouldn't be able to do anymore, but it's very similar to the old speed that you get in the super. And in fact, I think it's actually a little bit faster. Alright, so just to recap everything I went over in this video, there's a lot of changes to the Solar subclass. In general, top tree Dawnblade got a lot better, bottom tree kind of got screwed. The main things to keep in mind are I personally wouldn't bother using the charge up grenade mechanic. I don't see a lot of value in it. And the benefits it brings aren't really worth it compared to losing your grenade. Burst Glide kind of got screwed, although we don't know if this is a bug or if they fully intended it to be this bad. But either way, you can still get around a lot of the problems with Burst Glide, and there's even new mechanics involving it. So you've got the basic Icarus Dash Strafe. You can combo that with a sword to go even farther. And then when you're popping your super, you can still use Burst Glide. You basically just have to remember to be using the skate technique with Icarus. And you're good. I hope this guide was helpful. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. One thing I do want to mention for my dedicated subscribers is I do have a Discord, so I'll leave a link to that down in the comment section. And if you want to come hang out, ask me questions, or just talk about Destiny or other games, that is a great place to be. Once again, my name is Oxy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.